to the animal physiology course in NPTEL. So, today we will be starting a new section which is digestion. So, before I really give an overview of the digestion, let us talk a little bit about how this whole thing works. So, body needs energy, and for energy it has to process the food what we eat. So, in order to process the food, there is a complex channel through which the food moves through. It is just like a processing plant where you take the raw food, raw or cooked whatsoever, you take the knit food, and this food is broken down into small particles. That is basically, in other words, what you are doing, the way you process minerals, you take it, bring down the size of it so that the reaction takes place better. After that, this passes through different stages and different channels where different component of the food. So, food basically consists of 4 components. Okay, if you look at food, carbohydrate, which is the major source of energy, which includes your glucose, galactose, mannose, lactose. This we all have discussed in the first section. Then the food contains the lipids, which you have talked about, the major constituent of the membrane, the lipids, fatty acids, cholesterol and all other things. Then food contains a huge chunk of proteins, the building block, which consists of the 21 different amino acids, the permutation of combination of amino acids. And apart from it, food contains a lot of minerals, which are essential. As you could see, the whole communication within the body is because of minerals. You have sodium, chloride in the ionic state, potassium, magnesium, calcium. Okay. And apart from it, there are few other small components, which includes your vitamins and some hormones, which are derived from outside the system, okay, vitamin like molecules and all those. So, overall, if you were to classify, you have the food could be classified as carbohydrate, lipids or fats, proteins, minerals, vitamins, and few other accessory compounds similar to hormones or those kind of growth booster or thing. So, all these different components have to be absorbed in a different fashion. They cannot be absorbed and they have to be regulated in a different fashion. So, this whole process by which the food initially what we intake. So, in the mouth basically using our teeth we grind it. So, this is the first thing is to grind the food. In other words, you are increasing its surface to volume ratio, because as you are going down with the particle size, you will increase this. So, basically what is happening, whatsoever chemical within the body is going to act upon it to break it down further, will get more surface area. What we basically do in nanotechnology, where you reduce the size of surface to volume ratio of a particle. Okay. Then a part of it, then there are whole range of secretion of different hormones and different chemicals all along the pathway. And at times this food is exposed to, these particles are exposed to very acidic condition, then they are exposed to basic conditions, and there are action of different kind of molecules which dissolves the lipids. For that you need lipid dissolving solutions, then you need the absorption protein, and then you need special absorption of other minerals, and this whole thing takes place along the GI tract or gastrointestinal tract. So, all of you must have seen some picture of gastrointestinal tract here and there, or in some advertisement, or in a doctor's clinic, or at least at one time in all these years you must have seen one picture. So, at times it may sound to you very complex picture, you know how this whole thing works. So, what I will try to do in this class, I will give you a overall topology, that how in a very simple in a block diagram, which will clarify all your confusion. And I am not going to exactly draw the way anatomy is. I will just follow that. I will break up the anatomical features into block diagram. That will help you to appreciate how this whole structure looks like. Okay. And then what I will do, the first thing is that I will give you the complete topological idea. The second thing what I will do is that I will show, because if you remember while we were talking about the nervous system, I told you most of the digestive system is under the control of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic system. Okay. So, what I will do, I will draw the connectivity of the sympathetic and parasympathetic system, where all these are connected, and that will help you to appreciate that how these different opposing nervous signal help the food to travel all along the GI tract, okay, from the mouth all the way down, and the processed and the rest of the food which cannot be used is defecated out from our body, okay, as a fecal matter. So, that is the next aspect of the anatomy which I am going to share. And the third thing what we will do, we will talk, I will draw the cross section of the GI tract to give you an idea how this whole tract is designed by nature over millions of years of evolution, which helps it to absorb with extreme efficiency all the different things, and on how that structure is being harmed when we take we take excessive liquor or some other kind of agents which are not really very healthy for our body at a higher concentration. Okay. So, with this what I will do, I will just summarize what I have just now told you, and then we will move on to the block diagram of the digestive system. Okay. So, this is our digestive system, that is what we are dealing with, and this is our lecture 1. Okay. So, coming back to next slide. So, we talked about the components of foods, which includes your carbohydrate, fats and lipids, proteins, and peptides, and you have minerals, then you have vitamins. Okay. These are the components. Okay. Now, what I will do, we will talk about the whole geometry of the topology of the digestive system. Let us start drawing it. So, I am drawing it horizontally instead of drawing it vertically, because that way I will get more space to draw the whole thing. So, I will just put the label as soon as I am done with the drawing. Okay. Okay, so this is the teeth. So, where the food intake is taking place. So, food is entering here, and this is the zone where the food is broken down into small pieces. Now, you reach canal which is called esophagus. I will come to that. It looks like and there is a small a, and then we enter into stomach, small like this. Okay. And this stomach is exceptionally acidic. Come to that, and this is the part where food experiences an extreme acidic environment, and it is because of this environment whatsoever drug which has to be administered in our body through the digestive system have to be ensured that this could withstand that extreme acidic environment. Okay. Okay, now start labeling all of them one by one. So, the first one is the teeth, where basically the food is getting, if this is the bulk amount of food, You have the smaller component breaking it out into pieces. Step 1. This is the function of the teeth. Now comes the second, which is called the salivary gland. So, all of you are well versed with this one definitely, because salivary gland, this is in your mouth, and if you see some really good food, you start salivating. You start feeling bit, if I could get that food. So, this is completely driven by your brain. When the saliva started to come, or you are about to eat and you get a saliva. Okay. So, it is that salivary gland which regulates it, and it is regulated by the higher centers of the brain through a series of sympathetic and parasympathetic module. Okay. Now, from here comes this canal, which is this whole part, and mind it, one thing I haven't done, these are all double walled structure, and we will come in depth on this thing likewise. Okay. So, this is your esophagus. Some people write it with O, some write with E, esophagus. Okay. From esophagus, the food enters into a completely acidic environment of stomach, which has a pH in around 1. Okay. Stomach. This is the next stage, next stoppage for the food. Here the food gets kind of through, and now it is reaching stomach. Okay. Now, here there are two organs which comes into play. The biggest organ of the body, which is here, which is the liver, and so this is your liver, and inside that you see this structure. This is the one which is present almost embedded into the structure. This is gallbladder. Okay. That was the reason, because many a times whenever you see the picture of the digestive system anatomically it is being drawn, it becomes really challenging for those who hasn't seen the physical digestive system under the who hasn't done the dissection. At times become really difficult for them to understand exactly what is connected to what. That was the whole reason why I decided that I will give you a flow chart diagram. So, that will clarify all your exactly what is the anatomical location. So, now from now on, whenever you will look into a real anatomical image, you will be able to figure out the connectivity between the different organs which constitute this whole GI tract. Okay. Coming back to this, so this is the gallbladder, and this is where there is another organ you could see out on the other side. I haven't drawn the organ full, it looks more like this, and this is your pancreas. You might hear people suffer from pancreatitis and all those things. So, this is where lies your pancreas, and we will be talking a lot about this, because this is a seat of hormone secretion in the body. And here food enters into the small intestine, that huge area where there is a lot of absorption taking place, and which is very very nicely supplied with the blood vessels, so that they can absorb as much food particle or the different component of the food particle as possible. So, this is very well vascularized structure in the body. So, then comes the small intestine, and then comes the structure where which is called colon or large intestine. It's out here. But basically, the major job of this is to absorbs a lot of the residual matter. This is the large intestine. So, this is the GI tract intestine, and in terms of anatomical perspective, if I draw it, if I look at, so you are seeing this picture horizontally. If I draw it anatomically, then this is how it will look like. If this is the head and this is the rest of the body, then it is something like this. So, this is how it will look like. This is where you are taking your food. Okay. So, this is the same structure which I just, if I go for back slide in the previous slide. So, this is what is happening. So, food is entering from the mouth. So, this is where it is the mouth. Then there is a series of secretion which are taking place here from the salivary gland. After that, the food moves through the esophagus, and then it moves into the stomach. In the stomach, it is exposed to a lot of, it is a total acidic environment. So, the reason what I was trying to highlight is that, say for example, so this is something to a very application oriented situation. Say for example, you have to take a drug through the oral route. So, the first thing what happens is that once you take the drug, this drug experiences an extreme acidic environment in the stomach. So, if this drug has to be absorbed somewhere, because as I told you, it is in the small intestine where the maximum absorption is taking place, because it is a very well vascularized, supplied with lot of blood vessels. It is if that has to happen, then one has to ensure that that drug in the intestine, in the stomach survives the heavy acidic environment, and this is a big challenge whenever you have to take a drug directly through the oral route, because the drug goes through a whole range of modification, pH changing environment. It has to be stable, it has to be stable at different pH, so that it is finally being absorbed in the right place, which is the small intestine. That is why I just put that acidic environment. Okay. From this acidic environment of the stomach, it moves to the large intestine, which I told you is the zone where there is a lot of absorption taking place, which I am showing by the arrow. Enormous amount of absorption is taking place. Absorption of food by the blood vessels. Okay. So, after this whatsoever, so it is that it is in this particular zone where you have secretions from the liver, gallbladder and pancreas. So, all the secretion which are there are taking place at this zone, and all the different absorption are taking place. It is here where glucose is being regulated. It is here where the islet cells of Langerhans are regulating your glucose level and all other things. It is here where any defect in this zone leads to a person being diabetic or some kind of liver problem or something. It is at this critical zone of the pathway, which is essentially this is the zone where major problem arises. It can be in the form of liver cancer, it could be in the form of pancreatitis, it could be a form of some kind of problem in the gallbladder burst out. Okay. So, these are this is a very, very critical zone of the anatomy, where lot of absorption takes place and lot of very critical functions are being regulated here. So, most of the gastrointestinal pathologies in terms of liver or biliary problems, liver problem, pancreatic problem, they all are concentrated in this very critical part of the anatomical structure. chunk of it. Okay. As a matter of fact, if you look at some of the institutes of NIH or even and in India, we have a specific institutes for this, National Institute for liver. Likewise, I mean this is so very important, and it's a very interesting zone. Especially we are passing through a very interesting time when people are trying to do tissue engineering liver. They are trying to, if there is a problem in the liver, they could replace a part of it, or they are trying to tissue engineer pancreas, some part of it, if they could put it back. Okay. So, these are some of the very, very critical zones where there is enormous amount of studies going on across the world, where people are trying to ensure that how we could reduce the pain and problems of the people who suffer from liver disorders. You hear these things very commonly, fatty livers, okay, or liver cancer, or liver damage, or because of taking excessive wine or some form of liquor, there is a liver has a problem. Or same way in the pancreas, you hear this pancreatitis, many celebrities die of this particular problem. Okay. So, this is a very, very critical zone of the whole GI tract, and then after that whatsoever absorption taking place in the small intestine, then rest of the food which is not absorbed now moves to the large intestine. Large intestine is another zone, it is fairly huge zone, and it is not that this whole zone is very, very functional. So, the major idea of the large intestine is to absorb the residual minerals and all other things which has not been absorbed in the small intestine. So, this is the last frontier, and after that through the anus. So, here you have the anus, you defecate whenever the concentration of the material to be thrown out of the body goes beyond a concentration, you feel you have to defecate out, you throw away the food. So, this is an open channel. So, if you look at it from the mouth through the anus, this is an open channel which is running through the body along the cross section of the body. So, if I had to give you another analogy of it, it is something like this. So, if this is a cartoon of a human being, if you look at it like this. So, basically what is happening, so here is a channel which is moving like this. If this is the mouth and this is the anus, so here you have the anus, here you have the mouth, and along this conduit tube you take any amount of food out here. This is getting energy, the important material of the food is getting absorbed all along this tract. After processing, of course, it is getting processed inside, and so this is the food material. Okay. So, it is getting absorbed and rest of it is being defecated out. So, this is a both side open ended channel. It opens one at the mouth, one at the anus, and along that track all these phenomenal events are taking place, and this is what I wish you people to appreciate, that it is, though it looks so simple, but it's really a marvel of nature, how the food enters and goes through all these different structures, and in those structure it goes through a different process and different components of the food, your carbohydrate, your fat, proteins, vitamins, minerals, water. Even water needs a specific absorption process. Okay. There are specific water channels which helps the water to be absorbed slowly. Okay. So, how all these wonderful things are happening along that channel, this is exceptionally important for people to appreciate and understand. Okay. With this, what I will do, I will highlight one very interesting thing which is called peristaltic movement. So, basically the word is this, peristaltic, or it is also called peristalsis. Peristaltic movement. What really is peristaltic movement? movement. Okay. So, excuse me. So, whenever we take food, so what happens, how the food really moves through this channel? I draw the channel for you. Now, the food moves in the form of a bolus. So, when you take a food, it is just like we chew the food like this. Okay. Once we chew the food, it forms a bolus or a ball like structure, and that ball moves. Imagine you have a flexible tube like this and you drop a ball, how the ball will move. So, the ball moves like this. If you look at it, so if this is a flexible tube you have, okay, likewise, okay, and here I have a ball, something like, let me redraw this. This is I drew it so that, okay. Okay. And I have a ball like this. Now, this ball has to get through, and this is a very flexible. Okay, this is fairly flexible. So, what will happen? So, when the ball will be here, stage 1, when the ball will be here, this wall will get inflated like this to accommodate this. Okay. Then, once this ball will move here, then this part will get inflated. Okay. Then, as the ball moves here, then this part will get inflated to accommodate that big ball, and eventually once it comes out, and this is a flexible membrane. So, this whole motion of the ball, as it is moving through the digestive tract like that, is called peristalsis, and this whole motion is called peristaltic movement. Okay. So, this is how the food moves through this narrow tube in the form of a bolus. It goes through like this, and this whole peristalsis is governed not only by the nature of this muscle, the smooth muscle, but along with it there are nerve signals which regulates this process, and this is very, very important. This is one of the areas of research which is currently a lot of attention has been put, that how the nerve signals are regulating this motion of food like this, something like this. If you follow my hand, likewise, okay, it is moving like this, and this is very, very important, this whole motion of the food along the pathway. So, what I will do now as I told you, now I will draw the connectivity, because this is a complex tube. So, every point of it, people have to understand that there are a lot of connectivity issues here, who is connected to what and how these connections are taking place. So, what I will do now, I will add on that the component of parasympathetic and sympathetic, where they are regulating the whole process. Okay. So, let me see if I could do it in this diagram, a bit tricky. So, I will redraw it, that is easier. Okay. So, I will again redraw the whole structure, so that on a fresh A you can. So, here you have the salivary gland, and then you have the stomach coming through, and then you have the small intestine, then you have the large intestine, and then you have the anus. Okay. Here you have the salivary gland leading to the stomach. From the stomach it moves through. Here you have the pancreatic and liver connection. Okay, and this is the large intestine, and here you have the anus, and here on this side you have the gallbladder, and here you have the liver, and on this side you have the pancreas. Okay. 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 So, let me just put the nomenclature. So, here you have the teeth, then you have the salivary gland, esophagus, you have stomach, the liver, gallbladder, small intestine, pancreas, the seat of endocrine system, large intestine, anus. Now, I will introduce in the red and the blue the sympathetic and parasympathetic connectivity. So, it works like this. So, this is the parasympathetic I am drawing. So, this is the parasympathetic route moving through. Then you have this parasympathetic connectivity of this whole structure out here. Then you have parasympathetic connectivity of the whole large intestine. So, this is your parasympathetic connection. So, if you look at the parasympathetic connection carefully, you will see the salivary gland, stomach, your small intestine and large intestine is under the parasympathetic control. Right. So, this is parasympathetic control. Okay. Now, where is the sympathetic control, which I told you I will show in green. So, the sympathetic control exactly moves in the same way. Here is the sympathetic control moving through along the stomach. Okay. And then you have the sympathetic control exactly at the same point where you have the parasympathetic control, and here you have the okay. So, this is basically the parasympathetic control. Okay. So, I told you that there is the way the food moves. I will show it in green. The way the food moves is something like this along this path, and this is what we call as peristalsis. So, this whole peristalsis process along with this, along with this, along with this, here also the same thing happens. It moves like this. This peristalsis process along with the motion of the bolus along the muscle, like changing the elasticity of the muscle as it moves through, is also governed by the sympathetic and parasympathetic. So, if I say this one gets a positive signal here, say for example, it is a positive signal, it gets simultaneously a negative signal from here, or vice versa, whichever way you want to call it. If it gets a positive here, it will get a negative here. Same if it gets a negative signal here, then it will get a positive. So, there are always reverse signal which helps. So, for example, I say on, off, on, off, on, off, on. So, this whole tube is being regulated by this on off switches, on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, and this is whole completely innervated with these sympathetic and parasympathetic neurons. And apart from it, it is very, very well vascularized, because if you go back to the previous slide, if you look at this. So, this is under the complete. So, if I draw the vasculature like this in with the pink color. So, it is completely vascularized. There is a huge amount of blood vessel vascularizing it, because it is here the body has to absorb all its nutrients. Now, if you look at the cross section of it, since I have drawn this, now what I will do, I will draw the, after the sympathetic and parasympathetic control thing, I will draw the cross section. Okay. So, the cross section is very interesting. So, it has multiple layers. So, so basically what I am trying to show you is this. So, what I am essentially is drawing is the cross section of this. So, if you cut it like this, so if I have the tube like this and I cut it like this. So, this is the tube, say for example, this is the top part of the tube from where the food is traveling down all the way, and this is the anus. So, I am cutting the tube in a cross section like this, and this is what I am going to show you, the cross section. So, the cross section shows like this. This is how the cross section looks like. There are multiple layers, and this is the outermost layer what I am drawing now, the double layer, it looks like. Okay. Then inside this layer you have the next layer, which is something like this. Just for your understanding sake, I am doing it like that, because if you see an anatomy book, it is far more complex than way I am just trying to draw a block diagram, so that you people understand it in a simple way, that how that looks like, and appreciate the beauty of this channel, which is pretty much our lifeline. So, this next layer, so the space between this and this is called serosa, SCROSA, serosa, and this is called, this you see this layer, this is called longitudinal smooth muscle, longitudinal smooth muscle. There are two different kind of smooth muscle, and I have already talked to you about the muscle physiology. And between the longitudinal smooth muscle, you see these structures, these important structure, these are called gap junctions. This is how the electrical impulse from one muscle is being shifted to the or transferred to the next muscle. Then comes the next layer, which I am going to draw now, is something like this. Okay. Let me draw this, then I will tell you exactly what is the role. Okay. So, this layer, what I have drawn now, is called circular smooth muscle layer. Circular smooth muscle layer. And then within the circular smooth muscle layer, you have another layer, which is this layer, which is called mucosal layer. This is of course a double. I'm once again. Let me just change the. Okay. So, this is a double layered structure. So, all of them are pretty much double layered structures, thick double layered structure, and this is called your mucosal layer. Mucosal layer, and the central cavity, which you see out here, is called lumen. So, we talked about, and in between there is a layer in between these two. This is called submucosal layer. Submucosal layer. one second. So, if you look at it, so you have the outermost covering, then you have the serosal layer which is here, okay. Then you have longitudinal smooth muscle layer, which is the next layer, it has gap junctions in it. Then you have the next layer, which is the circular smooth muscle layer, and then you have the mucosal layer, and of course, in the center, which is the lumen through which the bolus passes. So, this is the kind of cross sectional view of the GI tract what we have just now discussed along these lines. So, these are the cross sectional view with little bit of here and there, some of them will have kind of brush border like this for enhancing the absorption and all those things. Okay. These are further modification, but overall geometry of the GI tract is like this. So, let us summarize what we have covered just now. So, we talked about the components of the food, including carbohydrate, fats and lipids, proteins, minerals and vitamins. Then we talked about the overall topology. This is the topology of the GI tract, gastrointestinal tract, with mouth, salivary gland, esophagus, stomach, liver, pancreas, small intestine and the large intestine and the anus. Then we talked about give you a feel how the vasculature is functioning. These are the vasculature or the blood vessel, which are all along, and it is an open ended tube. So, this is open here and it opens at the end at the anus, at the fag end at the anus. So, it is the open tube through which the food passes and it is getting absorbed. Then we talked about the peristaltic movement, how the food is moving through. Then we talked about the parasympathetic and the sympathetic control, and then we talked about the cross sectional view of the GI tract itself. With this overview, I will move. I will close in this lecture, and we will move on to the next lecture. We will be talking a little bit more about the real process, where which aspect or which part of the food is getting absorbed in which part of the body. Thank you.